Alright, good morning ladies and gentlemen, this is Dizzy translating for WhiteRa, and just for you, I'm translating an FP VOD where I'm playing against a Protoss player from Masters Leagues. He's about 4,300 rated, Roxkiss Pami. Roxkiss is his team. He's a Russian Protoss. Well, I'll talk a little bit of PvP. The map is Zelnaga, and here most often we're going to see basically a Fort Warp Gate PvP. Usually a mirror match. Of course, for you, I'm going to be showing a little bit different. I'm going to be showing a Blink Stalker, but the forward gate push is a very threatening tactic. It can basically kill you right away if you're going for a fast tech, or if you're saving basically a lot of gas for sentries. So if you're not building enough gateways, you can also lose to it straight away. There's two things you could do. The number thing you can do is mirror them as forward gate, and the second thing you could do is with the fast gas you can build a couple of sentries and wall up your ramp. Also, you could of course go forward gate and you can stay at your base, but if your opponent doesn't do a forward gate himself and you do forward gate and stay in your base, you're actually quite far behind, because the point of a forward gate build is to do a lot of pressure to your opponent. So right here, as you see, I scout quite late. I scout right after my gas, but that's because of my experience I have with this player. I've played him many times, and I know that he's very unlikely to proxy buildings against me. But of course, if you're just playing on the ladder, or you're playing somebody you don't know, I definitely suggest scouting right after the gateway. It's a lot better, because if there's some proxy buildings, you know, it's quite threatening. Of course, also scout around your base to see if there's any hidden buildings. So right there, I add cybernetics core, of course, and you know, we're just seeing each other's base, and we see that we've got exactly the same opening. It's quite a standard one from one gas. So in this situation, you know, we just want to get as much scouting we can before the Zealot comes out and herds our of course probe out of the base, because right after Zealot a Stalker is going to come out. And right here I see he's saving his Chrono Boost, of course, just as I am. So right here, as soon as my Cybernetics core finishes, of course I order the Warp Gate. Now, one thing I want to tell you, sometimes if you have a plan and then your opponent does something that he doesn't do against you, of course you need to adjust your plan. Of course, in PvP the safest build ever is a forward gate. At 24 supplies I have here, you need to stop building your workers, and then you need to add, of course, 3 gateways. But right here I see that actually his worker is away from me, and what I do is, instead of ordering the 4th gate, I add a gas, and that's going to be for, of course, fast blink research. So right here, the timing of my troops in the opening stages looks exactly like a forward gate would. So I'm going to have as many troops as my opponent has, and as right there, you know, we're mirroring each other, we're getting to the middle of the map at the same time. But right here, I see that he moved his probe out, and I can manage to snipe it. And right here, of course, I'm starting to develop my tech to get my blink, and right here I just want to control the map scouting, and as soon as he moves out, I see on the map that he's got more troops than I do. He has 2 Stalkers and a Zealot, so I have to push back. And of course I lose a little bit of shields on my Stalker, but I'm going to have my own Stalker come out, and because my Zealot is a little bit closer, I'll be able to push him back. It's all about micro in this early situation when you have a couple of units each. He shoots my Zealot, of course, and I take the shields off the Stalker, and we're basically equivalent to each other. So right here I'm making sure I'm warping in as many Stalkers as I can, and I'm Chrono Boosting my blink. Now this is a little bit of a risky situation here, because if he goes for a really fast push without a sentry, I'm going to be in trouble. But I see that likely he doesn't have a pylon very close to me, and I kill 1 Stalker, and he has to run and kill a 2nd Stalker. And even though I lose my own Stalker, the army advantage is in my favor, because at this point I traded 1 Stalker for 2 Stalkers and a Zealot, and because of my better micro and positioning of my troops in the beginning, I have an army advantage against my opponent, who's probably actually going for perhaps later blink research. So as soon as my blink is going to finish, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my superior army, and you know, I don't want to lose any troops, and I just want to push in, build my probe, and see what kind of pressure I can do on my opponent. Now keep in mind, at this point, I'm not expecting to kill my opponent. I'm just expecting to perhaps cut down the size of his army a little bit and just gain a little bit of an advantage. So right here, my blink is over, finished, and I can blink my damaged stalkers as soon as a shot is about to hit them. So because of that, I can of course out micro my opponent. Now he's gonna get reinforcements a little bit earlier than I will, so I have to pull back. But with this blink stalker micro, I can always out micro my opponent. Now keep in mind to keep your wounded units in the back where they're less likely to take damage. Now I'm just trying to see to use as much advantage as I can right now while I have my blink. I want to see if I can, you know, out micro my opponent and do a little bit of damage to him. Now he has a very good arc here. He just gets his own blink, and I know right here he's got more units, but I warp in 3 more stalkers, and because of those warped in units, I actually have more units than my opponent has, and I'm able to get 3 free stalkers from my opponent in exchange for only 1. Right here, the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually build a nexus off that advantage. Now most players might attack and try to trade armies or try to push their advantage, but that's not always the smartest thing to do. And that's quite simply why? Because your opponent on top of his ramp can likely have a stronger defensive positioning. And if you build an expansion, you basically force your opponent to either play catch up with a smaller army in a later expansion, or try to go for an all-in attack on you. So right here, I'm taking control of the map. I'm trying to make sure I have as much scouting on it as possible, and I am just making sure I have enough stalkers for when he comes in that I can fight him back. By the count of a stalker army, I don't think he's going for a nexus of his own. So right here, I just want to group up my units, and I want to meet my opponent at home. Now I'm going for a little bit of a risky move. I'm trying to kill the rocks there, but of course because of blink, I can always blink in my stalkers in here. So he moves in, but he sees the warping in units, and he doesn't know where my army is quite yet, and because of that, he doesn't want to attack. But he does see my expansion, so he knows unless he's got a nexus building or he's got Colossus tech, he's very much in danger. And of course it's very unlikely he's going to have Colossus tech because he already went for that blink research. So right here, I just want to build as many stalkers as possible and build basically only stalkers, and chrono boost those warp gates to build as many stalkers as possible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build an observer so I can have some sort of an idea where my opponent is coming from. So here he attacks me, and of course it's a blink micro battle. You want to blink very often either your damaged units or the units that are taking damage. Now keep in mind to continue to warp in units while you're fighting. And although my opponent had a little bit better concave, because I was able to warp in units while we were fighting, I was actually able to win this battle. And right here my opponent could do nothing but run back, and he lost the majority of his army. I have a nexus at this point and my opponent doesn't, so I basically won the game. As soon as I crush his remaining army, he's gonna have no choice but to GG out, and there he goes. He just leaves because he knows he cannot fight. So guys, keep in mind, this is a blink opening. You have to keep the first few minutes of the game under very close control of micro, but once you win that initial battle, you can basically go build the nexus and win the long economical game, or just force your opponent to GG out.